Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Please check out the KCC Discord linked in the description down below. There you can talk to me and a whole bunch of KCC fans who hang out there on a regular basis. I look forward to seeing you there. Our first story today comes to us from Dave2310675. Don't bother you with admin work? Okay, let's jump right in. Not something I did, but something I saw firsthand over 2 days. I hope this story fits here. Years ago, I worked as a registered nurse on a high dependency ward. Whereas on a normal surgical ward for a morning shift, you would get 6 to 8 patients. On our ward, you got a maximum of 3. Think involved patients with multiple conditions. It was not unusual, as an example, to have a physiotherapist, 2 nurses, and a wards person or 2 to help walk a patient using a rollator to the bathroom in the morning for their shower. Not because they were heavy, just because of all the pumps and drains that had to come along for the ride and for their safety. We had a pretty high turnover of staff, about 50% per annum, with the average time someone stayed with us being 12 months. Some left after a year because they could get easier and better paying jobs elsewhere. Some left because of the workload. I left after 3 years because I moved 200 kilometers away. But 2 people were constant on our ward. One was one of our ward's persons, not the object of this story, and the other was our ward clerk, Sue. I'll use her real name, as I'm pretty sure that was her name. It has been more than 2 decades, and it's a fairly common name. Sue had been there for years, and she was really good at her job. She knew how the place ticked. One morning shift, Sue got absolutely uprated by one of the new RNs on our ward. I can't remember her name, it doesn't matter. So let's call her RN Myopia. Whatever it was about, it wasn't actually important, and I was there. I was well past my 12 months there, so I was an oldie. The organizational culture on that ward was that we were a team. Remember the story above about taking a patient to the shower, often needing 4 or more people to help? It was not unusual to come back after one of those shower trips to find that for your other patients, other nurses had done your dressings for you, made a bed or 2, showered one of your other patients, gave out meds, whatever. You didn't have to ask, it just happened. You did the same for the next person when they were tied up. That's just how the place was. Best ward ever. That team approach extended to the wardies and the admin team. They did their work so you could concentrate on yours. You looked after them, and they looked after you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the admin officer on a ward can wield power. You may not think it, but they can. Anyway, Sue got roasted over something that didn't matter, and RN Myopia finished off with words along the effect of, "You just concentrate on doing your admin job, and I'll do my job as a nurse." Mistake. Such a big mistake. Those of us who had been there for a while on that day took a mental note. Sue would not let this one slide. Next day, we had almost the same team on deck. Normal weekday morning, busy ward. In the middle of showers, dressings, meds, mobilizing, attending to activities of daily living, OBS, making beds, tests, ward rounds, and everything else, a theater orderly shows up for one of RN Myopia's patients to take them to theater. But they aren't ready. That one person who could answer the phone didn't pass the message that theater was coming down for the patient for surgery. We watched with amusement, side eyes, as RN Myopia dropped everything to try and prep the patient while the orderly waited. Quick shower with chlorhexidine soap, run through the pre-op checklist, the whole shebang. We made sure her other patients were looked after, but there wasn't any way we were going to get involved between her and Sue. Just as some 15 minutes or so of work was finished in 5 minutes, Sue comes around the corner before the wardie heads off with the patient, and squares off with RN Myopia, beautifully timed, and says, "Oh, RN Myopia, theater have called you for your patient. I was gonna come and let you know earlier, but I got caught up with my admin work. I see they're here, so I'll leave you to it." Didn't wait for an answer or reply, just spins on her heel and goes back to her desk and phone around the corner. It was beautiful. RN Myopia didn't last much longer, but Sue did until that ward was closed a few years later. I still miss that ward and the people after 24 years. Again, I have to take a line from the comments. The first comment down below says, "Rule number 1 that I drum into new staff is Thou shalt not F with thy administrative support people. Yes, you should never tell a senior staff member what their job is, because that senior staff member is probably going above and beyond as it is, and they're probably more than willing to just do what's exactly on their job description and nothing extra just to teach you a lesson. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Club Wag. Shady boss lied about my position to keep me from policy allowed benefit for years. I found out and it changed everything. Let's jump right in. A few years ago, I worked at a big retail company and had for many years. Eventually, I went through enough grad school education to get my license to work at a higher level. Much more pay, more job satisfaction, more responsibilities, fancy title, but the job market was rough. I stayed on with my company to work in a floater position, where I would cover a large area and work at all the stores within that area on a rotating but irregular basis. Eventually, I wanted to get a staff position where I have a single store assigned. The area was huge, the furthest store being over 100 miles from my home, and that is exactly where I was assigned to train for the new role. It was a rough store. Folks in my position were robbed and assaulted at pew-pew point. Neighborhood was very unfriendly. Volume at the store was among the highest in the state. Staff turnover was, as you might expect, extreme. Well, after training, I wasn't really being scheduled to float to other stores, once a month at most. I asked to be scheduled a little more diversely since most of the stores in my area were much closer to my home and didn't require 4 hours of driving a day. Bossman told me that I was the only floater experienced enough to handle that store. I didn't buy it, but what can you do, right? Well, a colleague told me about the mileage reimbursement policy. Floaters working at a store more than 50 miles from home can file for reimbursement of mileage over that 50 miles each way, can even include meals. So I filled a few of these out and sent them to my boss to sign. He didn't quite refuse, but he never actually signed and filed them. I suspect as soon as I left his office at our district center, he tossed them out. Bossman tells me later that they must be lost in the system. Eventually, the same colleague showed me how to fax those same forms to accounts payable, bypassing the district bossman. So I started doing just that. One day, bossman calls me in a panic. He wants to stop my filing the forms. I ask to be floated closer to home, but he won't budge. He needs me at that miserable store. He promises me he'll make me a staff role at that store if I promise to stop faxing those forms. Staff roles are a promotion and usually come with better pay and a few other little conveniences, so I agree. Bossman says there won't be a pay bump right away, but that it'll come down the road. That never happened. 2 years later, the situation at the store has become too toxic for even me. I asked to step down from the staff position to be a floater again and be allowed to float to other stores. Bossman says that I am already a floater, never was in a staff position, but that he can't let me work at other stores because it's better for me and the customers if I stayed there for familiarity. Floaters do not get scheduled to stores exclusively, so I'm being singled out because they are still desperate to cover that dump of a store. I'm livid, so I start looking. It took me months, but eventually I found an opportunity to make my dream career transition. I put in my formal notice, and that's when the fun started. Remember that whole mileage reimbursement policy? Well, I kept meticulous track of all my shifts, and there is no statute of limitations baked into the policy, so I started filling out those reimbursement forms to retroactively cover every single shift from the past 2 odd years. I skipped the meal part since I didn't want to go through all that effort of finding receipts. I had a friendly store manager sign off on them and started sending them to accounts payable directly again. I didn't fax them all in at once, but for each shift in my final 2 weeks, I faxed a few dozen in. We still had fax machines in that line of work, believe it or not. I figured, what do I have to lose? Worst case scenario, accounts payable declines the forms. On my last few shifts, I started getting the checks from accounts payable, not added to my paycheck, but sent to me directly. Mileage reimbursements are non-taxable income, so this was all tax-free money coming to me. It must have taken a while for the charges to show up on a balance sheet, because a few weeks after my final paycheck, I got a call from my now former boss man. He wasn't happy. We got some big loss prevention manager involved, and together they started saying I was breaking some rule by requesting the payments. They specifically claimed I was ineligible because I agreed I wouldn't be eligible in a staff position. They then threatened legal action against me if I didn't remit the full amounts back that same week. But I had the email chain from when Bossman said I was never staff and always a floater. I politely referenced that email chain before letting them know firmly that because I was lied to, our prior agreement didn't apply, and I was fully eligible all along. Corporate policy, as confirmed by HR, agreed with me, so I let them know I wasn't returning a single penny. In the end, the reimbursements amounted to well over $21,000, and I transitioned into my dream job. I could say that I would trade that money back for the time I lost commuting to that miserable store 4 hours every shift, but all that pressure motivated me to make the best career move of my life. The great satisfaction of not only professionally surpassing my old boss, but getting to tell him that his lies cost him way more on the way out is almost priceless. I also shared my story and method with many colleagues who were being told wrongly by the bossman that they didn't qualify for this policy. Now, Opie added an edit onto the end. It says, "Thank you for all the support and comments. As many of you correctly guessed, I was working as a community pharmacist. I do want to clarify that most of my coworkers, technicians, pharmacists, front-end staff, and customers and patients were amazing people. Between them and my subscription to Audible with a long list of books I always wanted to read, it made the situation such that I could tolerate that commute for all that time. The job market for retail pharmacy was and is also very rough, and I can't overstate that enough. It has empowered big chains to abuse staff in this and other ways, and that also endangers patient care, not to mention staff mental health. I spent more than 10 months searching before I found an opportunity, and that involved me leaving the profession entirely. The district manager, boss man, and the store general manager, who was fully complicit in the lie, are both still working for the company last I saw. The moral of the story, please understand your company policies and ignore any verbal agreements or HR unsupported decrees otherwise, and be kind to your pharmacy staff. The job and companies are not always kind to them." I think here the boss probably knew that there weren't very many places you could go, so if you wanted to keep working, you pretty much had to do what they kept telling you to do. That's a really crappy situation to be put in, but unfortunately a lot of people are put into those situations every single day. Knowing exactly what the rules are and exactly what you can come back at them with is a wonderful thing to have. So make sure you read your employment contracts or your employee guides or whatever you have and know exactly what your rights are. You might need that knowledge someday. This next story comes to us from Ancient Educator 76. You can't talk to a paying customer like that. Fine, consider yourself comped and get the F out of here. Let's jump right in. This is not the story I wish it was based on the title, and for that, I apologize. Running the drive-thru for fast food has its ups and downs. The ups are when we manage to find the humor in the stupidity, weirdness, quirkiness of others. And the downs are when we're treated like absolute garbage. I'll start off by saying a quote that my manager said that Dave Thompson, founder of Wimpy, said, "Once a customer insults an employee of mine, they are no longer a customer." If this was an actual quote, I could truly say this is the malicious compliance. But it lies truly in the fact the customer I'm about to write about didn't pay for her food. I wouldn't let her. So Mumbles McGee comes in hot on the drive-thru, sputtering her seriously unintelligible garbage to the tune of, "I need a burger with pickles and onions and mustard, not ketchup but mustard and no mayo, and chocolate shuck." This is exactly how it sounded, except shuck really sounded like chunk, the way she pronounced it. I tried to explain to her as she rattled this off that first, I need her to slow down, and second, I needed to know what burger. We have a 2-ounce and a 4-ounce burger. Third, it works better if the customer either says what they do want or what they don't, as a very distant second, but still doable. I once had a customer list 10 things they didn't want. It was probably Julia Stiles, a la 10 toppings I hate about you, rest in peace Heath Ledger. However, listing things that you want combined with things you don't, then unnecessarily repeating the unimportant information is just confusing AF. I decided to ask her, okay, did you want a Dave single or a junior hamburger? And what toppings do you want? Mumbles continues, oh my god, I want a burger with, I can't even write what she said, and a chocolate shuck. I managed to get the topping she wanted by some miracle, then I asked about the shuck. To be clear, it sounded like chocolate chunk, which is a cookie we have. We also have a frotty, which is a shake, I guess. All this time, my shift supervisor is hovering around, and my fellow employees are getting antsy knowing crap's about to go down. Then it does. Are you effing stupid? Oh my god, a chorlip chirp! I swear she got less intelligible with each passing second. I almost called an ambulance, but I was too angry about being called stupid. I said, ma'am, I'm doing what I can with what you're giving me here. Please pull forward. Screech! I think it's hilarious how people who call others stupid are literally the stupidest and stupidest looking people I've ever seen. She didn't disappoint. Ratty hair, rosacea, late 50s, dumb look on her face that is trying to look angry, but I ain't buying it. Looks too forced. Frank Gallagher wouldn't give her the time of day. By this time, I've decided I'm going to tell her off. And as she pulls up, she starts spitting at me while saying, is there a manager? Cause I interrupted her by quoting my other manager I remembered, who said, ma'am, you can't go insulting our employees because we don't understand you. You need to just shut up. My shift supervisor chimes in, OP, you can't talk to paying customers like that. Enter malicious compliance. I since shut the window on her as she still continues to yell to the open air while my shift supervisor knows I'm pissed, and he decides to back down on this as I tell him how little I care about a crap paying job, and I'll have 2 more of these by the time I get back home, and that management needs to take care of us. We just got done with an ordeal where a customer called one of our employees the R word, and the management paid lip service to us but still apologized to the customer. Effing two-faced twat burgers. I was so pissed that I was willing to pay for her crap so I could tell her off. That's what I did. I handed out her food, wouldn't let Samantha collect on it, told her, here, we don't want your greasy money, get the F out of here and don't come back without an apology letter. Pre-update, the shift supervisor knew exactly what this woman was ordering because she's done this BS before to other employees, evidently. I can't believe they let her keep coming back. I'm taking a stand on this one, and I never paid for her food, I just let the crap supervisor figure it out. She never paid, but I'll be darned if I'm actually going to pay for her. And by the way, chocolate chirk means chocolate frosty. Who knew? I mean, at least this customer knew what they wanted when they got up to order. Not like the ones that get there and you ask them what they want and they go, Y'all saw that Super Bowl commercial, didn't you? I honestly think that if more companies put in a policy where they didn't deal with customers like this and just sent them packing, we wouldn't have to deal with it anywhere near as much. But I'd love to hear what you guys think on that one. Comment down below. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.